mother. He is the seed of the grandfather, who is the seed of Bahu and Jack. He came from Calcutta, stick and a bag on his shoulder. He took banana capra, so I am part seed of India. He endangered ship and the slavery, bind together two races in unity. There was no more mother Africa, no more mother India, just mother Trinity. My Bahuka planted sugar cane, down in the roady plain. So Ram Logan was there for Kashana. It's Jahadi Pai, brotherhood on the boat. Jahadi Pai, brotherhood on the boat. Jahadi Pai. Choose respect of color, Bahuka had to make that journey for I to have sympathy. So it is a great privilege to have such unique heritage. 50% Africa, 50% India. I have joined today to holiday, emancipation and arrival day. This battle Razak made a journey, 150 years gone already. So whether you're Hindu, Muslim, Christian, let's walk this land hand in hand. We could only prosper if we try. Jahadi Pai, brotherhood on the boat. Jahadi Pai, brotherhood on the boat. Jahadi Pai, Kumayo, Zimbabwe, Kumayo, Zimbabwe, Ayayo. If they want to know the truth, they catch him back to you. And somewhere on that road, you will see a man in a dhoti saying he prayers in front of a chanty. Then and only then you'll understand what is the cosmopolitan nation. There's no room for prejudice at all. United we stand, divided we fall. So whether you Muslim, Hindu, Christian, just know that in this land we could only prosper if we try. Jahadi Pai, brotherhood on the boat. Jahadi Pai, brotherhood on the boat. Jahadi Pai. We should learn to be one. Our ancestors came by boat. Take the salt water in your throat. You see, from and Amanda, the great grandpa and grandmama. One was a slave and one was in danger. But the religions of color did interfere with their love for each other. Nani, nani. I am proof of racial unity, and that is the way everyone should be. Everyone should have each one in their prayer. Let's show each other we care. As we all know, in coming high, unity is strength. Brotherhood on the boat. Brotherhood on the boat. You want to get brother and me in Trinity? Well, you put my head.
Oh, yes, 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 yes. Arrival day. Indian Indian Arrival Day. And we on Politics 101, we don't play with that. It's Indian Arrival Day. We don't care if the PPP don't want to call it Indian Arrival Day. Today is Indian Arrival Day. Our president under the coalition, David Granger, he said there must be Indian Arrival Day, Chinese Arrival Day, Portuguese Arrival Day. The PPP lump all and call it Arrival Day. We want to make it very clear. Today is Indian Arrival Day, and we are prepared to celebrate Portuguese Arrival Day and Chinese Arrival Day. We not playing, because we Africans don't do Arrival Day, because we Africans do Emancipation Day, and we don't want it to fudge with anything. That is when we talk about reparations, we're talking about reparations for slavery. We don't want mix up, and the PPP mixing up the thing. We want to make it very clear. Make it very clear. Politics 101, the WPA believes that today is Indian Arrival Day, and it should be called Indian Arrival Day. Coming in there with the song of Brother Marvin, and I want to dedicate that song to all our Indian brothers and sisters celebrating the coming here as indentured laborers. Especially, I want to say that today is, of course, a special day for that community, and we celebrate with them. Special hello and special dedication to Audrey Garraway. I know that's one of Audrey's favorite calypsos. Audrey Garraway, Audrey from the Essequibo Coast, who is a loyalist of this program. I probably miss more Politics 101 shows than Audrey. Because she's here even when I'm not here. Audrey, big up to you, Brother Marvin. And you know what I like about that calypso? It's an African singing about Indian arrival with passion. It comes from a deep place. You see this story about putting an Indian face and an African face and call that national unity? You all know I ain't in for that. Or somebody just putting on a dashiki if you're Indian and say, oh Lord, I'm for national unity. I ain't for that. When an Indian can sing about emancipation with the same passion that Brother Marvin is singing there about Indian arrival, you're touching me. Because like I said, it's about the other capturing the feelings of the other. That's when we are moving to national unity. National unity. Yeah. The PPP boasts about how many African delegates were at their conference this weekend. I didn't watch to see how many, but Jagdeo was boasting of the 3,000, plenty gonna be African. Here is where we catch Jagdeo. When the 35 members of the Central Committee were announced, I see about 3 African names. Jennifer Resford, Kwame Mackay, Jennifer Resford, and I'm trying to see if there's any other African. There's a lady, Sarah, I'm not sure whether she's African. She got an African name, Sarah Brown, right? And I counting my friend Roy barely get in. 34, number 34. Number 34. Angel Paul, number 35. My other friend, Donald Ramatar, number 27 or 28. The Jagdeo PPP take over the Central Committee 35. So all the Africans who went there, they went there a show, because when they're electing the powerhouse, the executive, only 3 or 4 of them. Oh God, my belly hurt me. My belly hurt me. And then they had what they call 5 Central Committee members that they elect, who going to be on the Central Committee, but they can't vote. Out of that 5, 4 is African. Brothers and sisters, comrades, you all see the Mickey Mouse unity that they're talking about? In 1959, at the PPP Congress, they vote out all the Africans. When the results came in, not one black person was on. Dragon was out of the country. Brother U.C. Kwayana writing then in the New Nation, the PNC New Nation, Brother U.C. writing, he said, he wrote what he called about the rot in the PPP, the rot, R-O-T, rotting of the PPP. Dr. Jagan came home and he nullified the election. He called off the election. Not one single African was elected. And here in 24, out of 35 elected members of the Central Committee who could vote, you have 3 or 4 Africans. The rot in the PPP. We're going to talk about that. I'm going to deal with that later on in the week. All the noise about how much African joining in the party. How much African in the Central Committee. And then the Central Committee meeting this week, they're going to elect 15 out of that 35 to be the real powerhouse, the executive. I'm waiting for see out of them 3 and 4 African who going to get on to the executive. Kwame Mackay, Jennifer Westford, Sarah Brown, and Sarah Brown could be Amerindian because Frank Anthony is an Indian. So I don't know who Sarah Brown is. If you all know, tell me. But I for now putting she as an African. So that's 3. I ain't counting Roy as African. Roy is a mix by. He's a mix. But you look, them people this, they're exposing themselves every day. They don't have no place for black people. When they now come to the 5 who can vote, they pick 4 black people, but they can't vote. Sisters and brothers, you know what I always say? We ain't got skin up the PPP, you know. The PPP is skinning up itself. Because genuinely, they don't have no place for black people in that party. They don't have any place for black people in that party. Good evening and welcome to Politics 101. I beg pardon to start you all off on that dread note, but it didn't escape me. It did not escape me. It did. I was looking for it. I was waiting for it. So they get all set of black people going to jump up in front of the camera. But when it comes to electing the powerhouses, black people role is to jump up in front of the camera in the PPP. Good evening. Welcome to Politics 101. Tacuma Ogunseye is there. And, you know, we are going to be talking to Tacuma because, as you know, that famous press conference that Jagdeo held a couple of weeks ago, it was all about Tacuma Ogunseye, and Ogunseye said that only 10% of the wealth in Guyana is owned by black people. And that is not true. But yet he can't tell me the truth. Where's the truth? I bet Jagdeo that when you come with the truth, it will turn out that Ogunseye is very gracious, because I believe it's less than 10. Good evening. I want to thank all of you who tuned in this weekend. We launched our cricket version of Politics 101, West Indies Cricket 101. We had quite a show last night. We had some of the old timers on there, some of the ex-cricketers, Bamfield, the cricketer, the former wicketkeeper, Basil Butcher's son, of course, Dr. Adams, who opened the batting for Guyana. It was quite a spirited discussion. And I thought, well, you know, we were going to start the cricket show with half of our normal show. The numbers were as high as a normal show, and in some regards higher. I want to thank all of you all who came onto the program. As I said, in the old days, cricket used to be a man's story. Now women have more affinity with the game in the Caribbean than men. And it was not surprising that a lot of women were on the program on the weekend. On Saturday night, we played an interview I did with Wes Hall and Conrad Hunt, way back when I had here, or when I used to sport here. And then last night, we discussed the West Indies squad for the T20 World Cup. So I want to thank you all for helping us to launch the new version of Politics 101, our cricket, West Indies Cricket 101. And I want to thank those of you who continue to contribute monetarily and otherwise to this program, because we don't come every day and ask you to contribute. And so those of you who contribute, do so out of commitment. And I want to thank you all. I want to thank you all. I want to thank Mr. Montplaisir for his generous donation last week. I want to thank him so much, and all the rest of you, Karen, Linda, all of you who monthly, sometimes every fortnight, send in your little donation. And we were able to take that donation and help to broaden the program. And we continue to run the program on Channel 9. And you know, we have to make a donation to Channel 9. So your donations are really helping us. And Keith Beresford, let not your heart be troubled. We are coming. In another week or two, we'll be ready with our music program, our Calypso and Reggae 101. We're working on it, and we are going to get there. I want to thank you all so much for helping us with this project, So we're ready to roll, are we? Yes, we are ready to roll. Tacuma Ogunseye says that Jagdeo is out of order. And Tacuma needs no introduction. Long-standing WPA leader, political activist. These days we like to talk about African rights activists. We don't throw it in there because Tacuma doesn't shy away from saying he's African, and part of his activism is African activism. So we are glad to have Tacuma here, and we're going to have his take on the issues. Let's go. My brother Tacuma, good evening.
Hi, good evening, Dr. Hines. Good to be with you and your viewers.
Jambo.
And I want to take the opportunity to Jambo to join you in saluting our Indian brothers and sisters on this important day, Arrival Day. As you correctly pointed out, we in the WPA view this day as Indian Arrival Day. and we are proud to associate it with the day. And we wish our Indian community, you know, um, all the best. And we hope that they will be able over time to give real meaning to Arrival Day. Because for me, I mean, it is them to define Arrival Day, but I think Arrival Day has become a very important factor in, in the Guyanese political life, and ultimately its role is still being evolved, and it is up to the Indian community ultimately to give the final or give more shape and meaning to Arrival Day in the context of the Guyanese nation.
Brother Tacuma, I think is very appropriate for me to ask you this question. You belong to the WPA. The WPA has always advocated what it called multiracialism. Walter Rodney seldom used that term. He preferred to use the term non-racialism. But I think they mean the same thing. But over time, multiracialism has come to mean all kinds of things to all kinds of people. We have an erstwhile comrade who today blasts us a lot. Um, he thinks multiracialism is just saying, I'm not against re-election and nonsense like that. So tell us for the WPA, as we move deep into this 24th century, as the political landscape evolves, as we move into oil, petrol state, what does multiracialism really mean from a WPA standpoint? And I made reference at the beginning about Brother Marvin singing that song, that calypso. And my point is that here is an African singing a calypso about Indian arrival with a feeling that makes you believe that what he's saying is for real. And I'm saying that for me, that points us in the direction of an authentic multiracialism. But anyhow, over to you.
Well, we in the WPA have always see multiracialism in a more profound way, whether, in a very profound way. And we see it as the collective struggle of all Guyanese races at all levels, in which we were prepared to put our lives down as a collective for the improvement of the Guyanese environment. So for us, multiracialism is something deep. It's not playing with words. I remember there were times when some of us have had to take shelter in Indian communities, and some of Indians have to take shelter in African communities. So for us, multiracialism is something much more deep than window dressing. It is a commitment of the race communities to do what is necessary to defend the best interests of the country. For example, for us, if Venezuela were to cross the border, multiracialism for us meant and still mean African Indians and Amerindians and Portuguese and others must be prepared to put their lives down in defense of the territory. That is what we mean by multiracialism. But at the electoral level, you see, at the electoral political level, multiracialism have been destroyed. There's no multiracial constituency to support multiracial electoral politics. And people will argue even multiracial politics in general. And whether we like it or not, the WPA has had to take cognizance of that reality and to see how best we could reshape and reposition ourselves on that particular question, and to bring it closer to the objective reality in the country. It is hard to speak about multiracialism in the way in which we speak about it in the 70s and the 80s, when there was a multiracial constituency, as were reflected in the civil rebellion, when thousands of Africans and Indians and others were in the street with a common political objective. But after 1992, okay, the country polarized and went back to its old ways, and consistently, elections after elections, that have been what's facing us. We're in our racist vote in the 90s behind the electoral political parties. And you can't dismiss that. That is why at the political level, we argue for shared governance and executive power sharing. We argue at the level of narrative that is designed to capture the public imagination, because they have been a lot of criticism, particularly from Indian rights activists like Ravi Dev and them, who have been questioning whether WPA multiracialism in the first place had any really place in the country. And as the polarization continues, it strengthens that view. Therefore, it is stupid for the WPA to begin to continue to discuss multiracialism in the way in which we discussed it in the 70s and the 80s. And what we have decided to do is to emphasize more multiracial policies and to fight behind policies rather than to fight behind the notion of your multiracial party. We're forcing people now to look at policies through a multiracial lens. And that's where we stand on the matter.
And of course, you have talked about our undying commitment to executive power sharing or shared governance, which is the ultimate of political multiracialism, because it is arguing that government and governance at all times, regardless of who win or lose the numerical election, that all our people's representatives of the different ethnic groups must be in government. And then we have the Thomas Buxton proposal of cash transfers, taking 10% of the oil income for each family, regardless of ethnicity, the ultimate of economic multiracialism, strengthening your assertion just now that WPA is placing emphasis on multiracial policies, multiracial initiatives, rather than playing around with the rhetoric and the window dressing of multiracialism. Welcome to Politics 101. I want to thank Wayne Caesar for having me on his program on Saturday. And my God, even during the cricket programs on the weekend, people were commenting on that program on Saturday night. Apparently, I said some things there that I didn't even say on Politics 101. We were, of course, talking about the boycott. And I think the spirit moved in me as I answered those who are saying that we are against Black businesses. And I think I might have said, how can we be against Black business? All we are saying is that those who want to take the oppressor into our community and using their businesses to showcase the oppressor, thus they're breaking the contract between them and the Brooklyn community. You see, they are producing a service, and the buyers are buying their service. And if the buyers say, you bring in my oppressor into your business, then we are not going to come back to your business and spend our money, but we are going to take that business to another African Guyanese business. And I called on people on Saturday night that if you're boycotting the businesses of those who are coddling the oppressor, rush your money to other African Guyanese businesses, strengthen them. So the African Guyanese business that was making $10,000 a month, they can now make $15,000 a month. You're strengthening Black businesses. And apparently that resonated with the audience. As I said, someone who called me and said, David, I didn't hear you with that on Politics 101. Did you come up with it just specially for Wayne Caesar? And I said, no, it's part of the thing of thinking through these things. You see, you're constantly thinking. And as you are thinking, you're clarifying for yourself and clarifying for others. So when I left the Politics 101 on Friday night, I had not developed that reasoning to the point. So by the time Saturday night I got on Wayne's program, it had developed in my mind and I was ready to share it. And apparently it took root among our people because it clarified for them the argument that they're making, that Ben Shop and all the others, all they're doing is damaging Black businesses. People felt that they now had an answer. They now had an answer to that rubbish. And I thank you all for helping me to develop these ideas so that we can use them. You know, Kwayana, he says, you know, what we activists do is we take the raw material from people and we refine them and we give them back to you as political and cultural nourishment. Taking your experiences, your boycott, thinking it through, and then giving it back to you, helping you to answer those who would make you feel that you're doing stupidness by boycotting. No, you are not. In boycotting those Black businesses that are using their businesses, they're using their businesses to showcase the oppressor. You are breaking your contract with them and you are entering into a new contract with other African Guyanese businesses. So you are strengthening African Guyanese businesses through the boycott. As I said, if those people wanted to carry Ali in the basement, an old party for either, Ali Clappy Rooty in the kitchen, I would have no problem with that. But they're using their businesses, which is a contract between you, the buyers, and them, the sellers. They're using that arena to bring your oppressor. Then they have to be disciplined. They have to be rebuked. And that's what the boycott does. But guess what? The boycott of them helps you to strengthen and to make other businesses, African Guyanese businesses in Brooklyn, stronger. Go. You all go for it. Go for it. Go for it. And yes, it comes by thinking these things through. Brother Tacuma, your thoughts on the Brooklyn boycott?
I fully support the observations that you have made. The Brooklyn boycott has to be seen in the context, that the problem developed. Now, if you have a situation where, quote unquote, comrades have been working together in the community to promote the community interests and the wider interests of Guyanese, both in Brooklyn and in Guyana itself, and a set of those comrades have decided to stab the other side in the back. Now, for example, if they had came to the committee and said, look, we want to invite the president to Brooklyn, and we think it's an important, initiative for unity, and there were political discussions in the group, and then the group probably failed to agree, and then the other side went ahead and invite the president, I would say it's a legitimate political differences, and you have to live with some of that. But that is not what happened. They didn't put it to the meeting and to the other comrades. They'll go behind the backs of the comrades and collaborate with the PDP and Ali. And in any struggle, collaborators have to be dealt with. No struggle could encourage collaborators and reward people for collaborating. Collaborators have to be punished. And that is the context in which I view this matter, is that if you decide to be a collaborator and to collaborate with the enemy of the people, then the people and the people militants have a right, has a right to organize a counter response to you. And this is not a question of whether Jagdeo or the PP like it. For me, the political test is whether the response that the activists shape could achieve the objectives that they want. I'm just assuming because I'm not on the ground there with them. But I think they probably had to be responding to the play-up that the government and the propaganda agencies give to the visit. They didn't treat it as a normal, casual visit of the president in Brooklyn, and then by chance he stepped into a restaurant. It was a well orchestrated thing designed for political propaganda. And therefore, the other side had to find an appropriate response, okay, to match that. And if they think that boycott dramatize their response, and if they think that boycott helps to separate the sheep from the goat, and force persons who honestly felt that they were manipulated to come out in public and say, look, we were being manipulated, I think as a political tool, it has achieved its objective. And of course, the way in which the PAP respond is the best evidence to know that the boycott or the threat of boycott actually achieve its objective. And I agree with David that boycotting one set of African business is now boycotting all African business. That you carry your business to other Africans, okay, and encourage them, and let the collaborators be exposed, allow them to be punished, let them get some punishment for some period. So for me, the judgment is for those on the ground, and for me politically is whether the decision they make to call for the boycott, okay, achieve the objectives that they wanted to achieve. It got nothing to do with the Jagdeo vex or the PP vex. That's their business. The boycott is we business.
The boycott is we business. I want to salute Sister Francine Cruz, who has been flying the WPA flag on these platforms more than even people like myself, getting into all kinds of quarrels and fight on our behalf. Francine, I want to thank you so much, for flying the WPA flag. And she's saying, long live the freedom fighter, my brother Tacuma Ogunseye. I'm seeing the rebirth of our beloved party, the Working People's Alliance. And as I always say, it is not for me or for Tacuma or so to sing the glory of our party. It is for you, the people, to see the usefulness of our activism in what you do. In that sense, we come to politics with a different kind of morality. Not really. People get frustrated with me, I know, because I don't really, as we say in Guyana, push myself. I get into a lot of trouble because people feel that we are not pushy enough and so forth. And I try my best to explain that it is not that we are not interested in politics at our level, politics at the leadership level, politics at the level of government, but we come at it from a different political culture. Tacuma?
Yeah. And this is the problem that we have at WPA. We have Guyanese and especially African Guyanese at the moment. We got to be realistic in terms of the political engagement. We have a population that have been historically oriented in terms of electoral politics. You see, we got to make a distinction between electoral politics and politics in the wider sense. In the wider sense, the WPA has more space, okay, to flex his muscles and to, project itself in a certain way without undermining, okay, the political objectives of the entire community. Electoral politics pose to us a difficulty, which people often, okay, ignore. I mean, nobody can't miss that the PNC present internal difficulties and their divisions have weakened the party significantly, and the party is the weakest in the history of the party as I know about. And by extension, the African politics and African response is at the weakest. Now, the WPA faced with that reality, we have to be careful that we don't conduct ourselves in a winner-take-all political environment, okay, that worsen and weaken the African political opposition and make it easier for the PPP. Maybe, and these are the kind of balancing acts that we have to make. And we have, and many times people don't appreciate that level of politics. Now, when we decide to work with the PNC with Corbyn after the 2006 elections onwards, and we have worked with them since then up to 2020. In electoral sense, what the WP have been doing is giving up its right to make and to carve out an electoral space for itself. Now, the PNC, given the history and the size, they could go into all kinds of variations, and it doesn't affect their electoral history. So when the WP stick with the PNC and the APMU, okay, we are paying a tremendous price. We are playing with the very existence of the party, at least electorally. We may exist politically, but we're playing with the existence of the party electorally because we're not building a WPA electoral constituency. And many times we're not being rewarded for that serious sacrifice we make as a party. So we have all of these complexities because politics is not a one-sided thing. It's not what the WPA should do. It's also what the allies that WPA are working with, how they're reading, how they're seeing the situation, and to what extent they're prepared to go into principal compromises with the party. So yes, the WPA in normal circumstances, okay, we think that we have a candidate that could stand up against all the candidates, the line is PPP, PNC, AFC. We got a candidate, okay, that fit the bill, that will stand up, okay, against all of them. So we're not deficient in that way. But the winner-take-all system limits your politics, and that is why we got to get rid of the system. We got to get rid of the system. And so we in WPA have had to develop a more complicated and complex response to the politics.
A complex response to the politics, and would like to thank those of you who are the old members and supporters, and who are the new supporters. And I was on Saturday when one such person said to me, I am WPA. And you can't call people's names, but I thank all those of you who have privately and some of you publicly thrown your support behind us as a force. And as I said, if you vex with the PNC, and I assume that not all of us will love the PNC 24/7. Some of us will vex with them 12 hours a day. Some of us will vex with them 24 hours a day. You don't have to go crawling to kiss the PPP ring. You have an alternative on the opposition side. And with all humility, the WPA sees itself as one of those alternatives. Miranda Brown is asking me, what contract are you talking about? Who are the signatories to what agreement? You see, me auntie always tell me, you go to school for learn, but mustn't boast on people. Miranda, you know about contract theory? You're asking me where the signatories of what agreement? You obviously know about contract theory. David Hines, I'm far from a coconut tree, I know what I'm talking about. There are contracts, social contracts, that you don't have to have signatories to. You see this simplistic politics, you have PPP people want to push down the throat. We got bright people on the side. We know what we're talking about. Miranda, bag your face. You know better. Brother Ogunseye, Sometimes the politics get too heavy for these PPP people because they believe black people so simplistic that that they can push anything down black people's throat. I started the program by making the observation that of the 35-member Central Committee of the PPP, you had maybe maybe four African Guyanese on a 35-member. I named Jennifer Westford, Kwame Makar, who you can say are PPP, and somebody named Sarah Brown. I can't think of any other there. Out of 35, after all the boasts, the PPP is the most multiracial party. And again, here goes that term, multiracial, right? Multiracial in bringing people before the camera. But when it comes to picking the powerful members, the multiracial gone through the door. And when it comes to the 5 who can vote, 4 of them are Africans. So that's one I wanted to comment on. The second thing, Roy bring 34 out to 35. In just on the fall, 35. Former President Donald Ramotar bring number 27 or number 28. What's happening there, Tacuma Ogunseye?
Now, if we start at the latter, I think it's clear. It's a clear indication of how dominant the Jagdeo's control of the party, the party machinery has become. And I think that the old stalwarts like Rui and Ramatar and others, they are being gradually forced out of the party. And it is not surprising to me, because that line of march and that writing was on the wall for some time. And the party and when I really don't want to dive too deep in PPP party politics because that's their business. But when one of the things you always had with the PPP, I remember in the heyday of the 70s and the 80s when they were close to the Cubans and the Russians, and they declared themselves a Marxist-Leninist party. In discussions with some of the Cubans, when we had some discussions, they were always worried that they said the PPP, they have created a lot of opportunity for training for them, both political and otherwise, even give them equipment to help make the revolution. But every time they have a meeting with the PPP activists, it's either set of old cane cutters who are Indians, or if it's young people, it's surely Indians. And they've always been concerned that this is a strange Marxist-Leninist party, which seems to only have among its ranks persons of one ethnic group. And it was always a worry. And when the Soviet Union, when Gorbachev and them begin to make some significant shifts in Soviet politics and the international communist world, almost every Marxist-Leninist communist party in Europe, Asia, Latin America had splits. The PPP had no split because it was an Indian party. It's an Indian party. So when Jagdeo them shift and now officially take away Marxism and Leninism from the party, it's nothing surprising. Quay had not been pointed out that many years that the PPP is an Indian party. And unfortunately, my friend like Rui and Donald who is steep in the ideological commitment and legacy of the party, realize that they have no place in this Indian party, which had become now not just simply Indian, but racist, domineering, revisionist, and reactionary. So, in a way, I don't know, but they gotta make the judgment. In a way, it may be
before
good.
you go to the race part, they throw out Marxism, Leninism, they throw out socialism, but they keep democratic centralism.
Well, there's domination. There's cultural domination. They can make no mistake about that. Jagdeo is very committed to domination. Not only domination, the party, the entire country.
Let me just stick this, all your thoughts, all it right there, because I just want to share this with the audience. I remember 1979-80 when they were doing Burnham was changing up the constitution and so on, and the PPP was going on about Burnham thing, and we also were in the struggle against changing it to what we call then the Burnham Constitution. I remember Kwayana put in my hand a copy of the PPP's proposal for the Independence Constitution. And in 1920, Kwayana was that type of person. He ain't telling you, he put it in your hand, he said, read. So I read through the thing. And what struck me immediately was the resemblance between the constitution Burnham was proposing and what the PPP was proposing. And eventually, of course, the PPP said nothing was wrong with the Burnham Constitution because they keep it till up to now. Is that Burnham was wrong. Nothing was wrong. It's like Jagdeo saying the other day that the PNC used fair, and we in the PPP use fair too. But we fair is justified and they is unjustified, you know? So that domineering thing was there since under Dragon, since in the 60s. But anyhow, over back to you.
Yeah, so I was trying to make the point that in a sense, I don't know, but it's Roy and Ramatara company can ultimately make the judgment. The fact that the party itself has separated themselves from them may open up, other political possibilities, but it all depends upon them.
Are you surprised that only 3 black people make it onto the Central Committee?
Not surprised at all. People don't play them kind of games, man. Don't worry, people is very clear, and Jagdeo, and particularly Jagdeo. Jagdeo is very clear with his line of march. For Jagdeo, the PPP is an Indian party committed to Indian domination and committed to keeping black people in their place. Jagdeo is clear about that. And he would not, encourage any significant participation of Africans at any high levels in the PPP. As you correctly said, Africans to them is window dressing. It's window dressing. You see the contempt I have never seen. We have had problems with Jagan, and we have had problems. We have always known that Jagan, despite the Marxism, he's committed to, he's an Indian, and he got the Indianization. But there's something in Jagan that you could have worked with. Now, Jagdeo, there's nothing with Jagdeo as he evolved you could work with. I remember when Jagdeo first came on the political scene. In the WPA executive, we had, we're examining, the situation, a young leader and so. And some people were very optimistic. And I remember UC particularly was very, felt very good that a young person in the form of Jagdeo, was given a chance to lead the party in the country. And I remember being opposed to it. And I was opposed to it on the grounds that I don't think Jagdeo got the experience. And you don't have the history of struggle to deal with the complexity and the difficulty that the challenges Guyana poses. And he's likely to use the power that he inherited from the party and the state in a very negative way. And I've lived to see it happen. You see, and I say this because Jagdeo, and I don't have nothing personal against Jagdeo. All the problem with Jagdeo is political. I remember the first encounter I had with Jagdeo many years ago. There was a visiting African president and at the former residence of Burnham. They had an activity there, and they invited a number of people, including on our side, the WPA. We had Father Malcolm Rodriguez and others, and we put up a Jagdeo. And Jagdeo came forward and said, Ogun, I see in the recognition book. The PNC had produced a recognition book in those days with WPA activists, for the police and the security, keep top with. and we had a good laugh and so. Apart from then, I had no political contact with Jagdeo. So the last personal contact was very friendly, very civil, to the extent that we got problems. It's politics. Jagdeo police shoot at me 2 times in my life. Boredom police never shoot at me. So those are the kinds of things Black Jagdeo government, stage and contribute to one of the worst level of extrajudicial killings, promoted not simply by institutional weakness in the police, but extrajudicial killings promoted by the dictates of the government at the highest level, which include Jagdeo himself. Oh, those are tremendous things, and Jagdeo somehow feel that all of those things don't shape African response to PPP, an African sense of victimhood and insecurity. For Jagdeo, those things doesn't matter because he treats us as less than human beings. The fact that he presided, he was one of the longest serving presidents, and he presided with a government that changed the procurement legislation they inherited from Hoyt and create a situation where 95% of the contracts go to Indian and Portuguese and non-African contractors. And the state is the largest purchaser of goods and services in the country. Billions of dollars per year go in that direction and nothing into the African community. He don't see that as helping to popularize us. And therefore, we have a right of victimhood. We could go on and go on. In fact, I wrote a letter in response to him. I don't know if they can carry it. I'm hopeful that Starbrook News also carry it.
We have carried it. It's on our website. It's all
okay, good. But that's good.
It's there. Yeah. Yes.
Right. I'm glad to hear that. So back to the issue. So the PPP position on Black people is very contemptuous, and it's unlike the problem we had with Chedi. I would say it's even unlike the problem we had with Janet. I think those two presidency, whatever problem the Africans had with them, it had a racial component, but a lot of it was steeped in ideology. This Jagdeo is contemptuous, and he developed a sense of power, and he's a person who have never struggled for nothing. I don't know Jagdeo ever spend a day in a police lockup. I can't remember Jagdeo and Nandalal and Ali ever spend a day in a police lockup. And that is a dangerous thing when a set of political activists put their hands up in power and they have no sense of sacrifice and the collective and individual sacrifices other persons other than themselves have made so that they can inherit this power. Okay? It is easy for them to see power as a personal property. And Jagdeo see the power of the state and the government as personal property. That he could do it like. And he become contemptuous of Africans because we have failed to respond in the way we normally respond to oppression historically. And I'm telling you, the day there's an African uprising against this government, and uprising doesn't necessarily mean a violent uprising. We need a political uprising. The day Africans begin to come in the streets back in their thousands and begin to march and make demands, I am telling you, Jagdeo is basically morally a coward. But he's a dangerous coward because he understands power and he's ruthless. And as I keep saying over and over, Jagdeo got a simple way of ruling. The things that we were accustomed to in the colonial period and after, where you got problems with the state, you pick up your placard, you go in front of the governor's house and you shout it down and you complain and you're likely to get a compromise. Jagdeo made every right to protest. He put such a high price on it that you always got to think the police going to shoot at you, they're going to beat you up, they're going to throw you in jail. He put a high price. Therefore, if you want to achieve things by the normal democratic tools that the Constitution open up, you have to decide that you have to be prepared to pay a big political price. And unfortunately, the opposition collectively have failed, to beat that thing back. Because the way you deal with somebody like Jagdeo, you tell him, yes, we can pay the price. And you force him now to readjust his politics. But once he keeps winning with his style, then you're in trouble. And I think that is what we faced with. And I'm saying all of this to say, we're not dealing with normal politics. We're not dealing with people who you could reason through logic. Jagdeo and the PPP, as it is constituted, would only be open to civilized politics when they begin to see African community and Africans in the streets. I mean, others in the streets are also important and so forth and so forth. The Amerindians, unfortunately, is the hinterland. Okay, but in the reality of Guyana, the critical mass to bring about political change in the African community, and the day that the African community began to rise up politically and begin to speak politically differently, okay, I'm telling you, a lot of things that we see as difficult, you're going to see how quick it can disappear.
We will see how quickly it will disappear. Tacuma Ogunseye tonight, batting like batting like Brian Lara. Batting like long and dangerous. I don't want to go back to the old timers like Richards and Headley and so on. Batting like Brian Larry tonight. Miranda, yes, you know that I am not fearful of anybody challenging me intellectually. You're quite right on that. I have no fear. But what I'm saying, when you come in on this field, come good. Because you aren't talking to Pagali people. So don't bring no Pagali argument and so on. When you come in, come good. Because we come from good stock. I like the robust conversation that is happening here, and that is what this is about. And Brother Ogunseye, we have challenged the PNC on this program, and I'm getting to my question for your remarks. After Brother Aubrey Norton last week made that passionate statement on the African condition, we made it very clear on this program that it is time for us to move to the next level. Because in a sense, the position that we have been taking over the last 4 years, some of it justified, nevertheless plays in to the Jagdeo's game plan. And part of the upsetting of that game plan has to be to go outside of the box. You heard Brother Norton's statement on the African condition. I dare say from my standpoint, it was a statement outside of the PNC's box. What says you?
I agree with you. And I think that it came at an appropriate time. You see, the PNC has to make up his mind. And, they're so critical to the African community and critical to the country. And they're critical to how quick we will get the PP off our backs. And they have to make up their mind as a party, whether the definition of electoral politics is of such that it becomes simply a prisoner to win or take all elections, or they're electoral party who, while they fight and committed to elections and committed to changing government electorally, understand that at some historical point, you have to go out of that box and you have to embrace other approaches. And I think the African question for them has always been a problematic electoral question because of the African numbers. And their sense that they got to get crossover votes in order to win the elections. But the truth of the matter is that the PNC have never won elections on its own in the history of the country. And that is something that the party has to face, even if we don't want to say it in public. They won elections, they came to power in 2015 by an alliance between WPA, AFC, and so forth. And and it's not, it doesn't got nothing to do with the PNC being extraordinarily bad. The PNC is not a perfect party, but you up against the PPP is not a perfect party. It's that you up against a political reality where race and political loyalties behind race-based party is the name of the game. For the PNC, you have to make a judgment at this historical moment with oil, with the present condition of the African stakes in the economy, which is minimal, I say less than 10%. You have to watch what effect oil will have on the economy. New forces coming in. Every time a business person comes to Guyana, they can't find no African business. So even if they're willing to collaborate with African business, there's no African business presence of any significance. So you must know that if this continue, African economically will be marginalized, African Americans continuously. And those who have stakes in the economy, the Indians, the Portuguese, now the Chinese, and so forth, will be the beneficiary, okay, of the oil money. And so the African condition has to be a critical concern for any genuine organization that is committed to African interests or any genuine African leader. And I'm heartened to see that Norton bite the bullet and took the position that he took. And he has to carry it to the next level. And for me, speaking for me at a personal level, he has to come out boldly and say he wants power sharing and he wanted before the next elections and throw the mantle down. You have to disrupt this whole so-called peace. You see, in politics, you have to work with a timetable. That even if by chance we were to win the elections, given the African condition in the economy, you are literally sharing power with others. So you're not in a situation where you could hold on to power and use power the way they're using power. The economic structure doesn't permit it. So whether you win by yourself, you got to be sharing the power. So don't play that game that Jagdeo and the people want you to play. Okay? Demand half of the power for African people and let me fight this battle. It comes a time in a country where you have to revisit your governance system. And if your governance system requires you to make a U-turn on previous understandings and the social contract we had at independence, that social contract haven't worked for Africans and Amerindians. In fact, it haven't worked for the whole Guyanese nation. But we discussing the African question. It can't work because we become the poorest. It didn't work because we got political power. And therefore, our existence required an urgency that was never, ever that urgent in the modern political life of the country. And the African Party, or the PNC, the African leaderships in the PNC, has to recognize that. And I'm hopeful that Northern position is not just tactical. It's amongst a strategic shift, okay, of widening the conception of electoral politics and, okay, non-electoral politics. And to know at this historical juncture, they have to break the backbone and the power of the PPP. Not the Indian community. You see, power sharing would not break the back of the Indian community. And we're not aiming at breaking the back of the Indian community. We are breaking the back of the PPP domination to free up the country.
The PPP's domination, that Jagdeo said on the weekend that the PPP is not interested in power sharing. I'll get Tacuma Ogunseye's thoughts on that. But just breaking news here. Longtime People's National Congress Reform member Amna Ali on Monday appeared to be recovering from serious heart and kidney complications, well-placed sources said. Ms. Ali, a former PNCR General Secretary, who was recently embroiled in a public spat with her disappointment with Aubrey Norton's performance, has been hospitalized for the past 2 weeks. Sources said Ms. Ali was recovering and was a lot better than when she first went into hospital. Expert medical teams were able to have collaborated, and she is recovering. So that's the news there. Amna Ali, longtime PNC member, former general secretary, is recovering apparently from serious heart and kidney problems that she developed over the last 2 weeks. Our prayers, of course, go out to her. And we call on all of you on this program for your prayers for Miss Amna Ali. We operate here on the view of politics, that politics is not personal. Ultimately, politics is about people's politics and not their person. And whatever you may think about Sister Amna, in this period when she is battling serious health problems, we want to say our prayers go out for her and to our family. And here is hoping that she recovers. Here is hoping that she recovers. Our brother Tacuma Ogunseye.
I join you in expressing that sentiments, because the comrades have given a lot of service to the country and the party, and that and at the end of the day, we are humans and mortal beings, and we at some point in time will come down with something, and that we hope that her condition is not terminal and that she will be this thing, because she still have more to contribute in a country like us with declining skills at all levels. We need our experienced people politically to be around, even at moments where we have difficulties and difference with them politically. We have to be civil enough to recognize that political difference must not drive us into barbarity.
Well said. Well said. Jagdeo says no to power sharing again.
Well, I'm not surprised. If you'll see in the letter that I make reference to, I made the observation that I was not convinced when listening to Jagdeo on the Ali business. While I accept that Ali visit was part of the reason, I knew that Jagdeo had a big intention. Jagdeo was setting the stage. I listened to him very carefully to muddy the political waters so that he could push the question of power sharing in the back burner. Because last year, when they had the problems with the WPA over the local government elections, he put it on record. He said the time for power sharing ain't right. But he said, look, there's going to be a constitutional reform process. And if in the next year or later in the year, and if the people, want that, he and the PPP will live with it. And I felt it was significant from him, but I know his opportunism. But in politics, you got to, tie people to the reward. But so when I listened to him and the way he went out his way to play the boycott thing and to attack the PNC the way which he attacking, I know he had a bigger intention. And that intention is to make sure that that the question of power sharing is knocked off the political agenda. But that's Jagdeo's business. This country doesn't belong to Jagdeo. Mm-hmm. We don't have to ask Jagdeo permission to struggle for whatever constitutional changes we want. We don't consult the British and ask them whether we must struggle to end the colonial rule. If you were to put it to Britain, no, we want colonial rule to end. No. We have had to decide as a nation and as a people whether we could live with the colonial rule anymore, and we decide no, and we fight and wage a battle. It's the same thing for the African people, and all Guyanese, but we deal with the African business right now. Africans have to ask themselves whether they could live with the contract that we struck at independence. And I'm saying that if you look at what Guyana has become a hostile place to African interests. The most simplest thing, the rulers and the propaganda agents, when a set of rulers have difficulty in understanding that a section of the population who was deprived of over 250 years of generational wealth through slavery is entitled for special treatment, and have entitlement. I mean, it is worse than the colonial. Is worse than the colonial mentality. And this is seriousness, because when you have a set of rulers who know how the country's history and the economy and the social relationships were changed, were fashioned in the colonial period, and they are now behaving just like the colonial masters and worse, they disqualify themselves to be leaders, to lead an independent country. Okay? And in normal circumstances, I'm telling you, in normal circumstances, if the racial equation wasn't what it is, okay, if it wasn't what it is, I'm telling you, I would argue for Africans to deal with these bastards in a different way. But I'm cognizant of the historical reality. I'm cognizant that Indians and Americans are equally victims of the colonial arrangements like Africans. And we have a duty in trying to resolve the legacy of colonialism, in reconstructing the economic and political and social relationships, that we do it in a way that bring the least pain to our population. You know, these bastards, they have made a peace with the Americans, white people. But they can't make peace with black people. They are willing to make peace with the Venezuelans. Already Venezuelans, we're told, have the more Venezuelans in this country than Amerindians. And if Venezuela cross the border tomorrow, or up the Antique, they will enter into an arrangement with Venezuela to share power. But they can't share power with the descendants of African slaves who have built every infrastructure in this country before other people arrive. And for them, this is a simple matter. But for us Africans, our whole existence is based upon this reality. Every day I face young Africans ask me, why is it Indians have so much businesses and Africans ain't got no business? Why is it Indians are able to seem to unite more and we seem to have more division among ourselves? And I have to answer those questions. And I've been answering those questions from the age of 16 in Askria to 72 to explain to Africans the logic of history. And often I try to simplify it after long explanation and ask them, why is it you and I are having this discussion in English? Are we talking in an African tongue? And the reason we talk in Africans is because of the consequences of colonialism and enslavement. And I asked them some straightforward question. I asked them, I asked them, why in the average African house, African Christians, you will see a European God up there and you give them a portrait of a black God or an African Jesus. They're hanging it up nowhere. And this is hundreds of years after enslavement. We are damaged. And these are some of the challenges that we have to deal with, okay, as a people. That's unique to us. And anybody who don't care about those things, whether they're white, they're black, they're Chinese, or they're what? Okay, they are oppressors of Africans. And we have to treat them as such. And let Jagdeo and company understand. They must understand that time gonna come very soon in this country when Africans gonna say we had enough. But we want to give the Indian community assurance that we are not after the Indian community. We doesn't want domination. We doesn't want to take away Indian wealth. We doesn't want to deprive Indians of the stakes in the economy and the politics of the country. But we want to create a political situation where, as I asked in the letter, we don't want a situation where Jagdeo seems to be offering us. He said he wants to enrich the entire country. But he enriched in the entire country at a stage where Africans are at the bottom of the economic level. Let me say Indians control 40% of the economy, roughly. Okay? Chinese and Portuguese control the rest. And we make it, and we're trying to enrich everybody. When the others are billionaires, we are millionaires. So we're the poorest among the rich. That is not the destiny we want for Africans, because that can't sustain us. The numbers may sound fancy in monetary terms, but at the end of the day, if all the rest are billionaires and you're millionaires, you're in poverty. Are we clear as African leaders on these matters? So Jagdeo shouldn't believe he's fooling anybody by throwing around this talk about enriching people and that. We're not fools. We want a system that deliberately commits itself to use our money to correct historical injustices among the population, in which Africa and Amerindians are the worst off at present. There's also injustices that are going to be corrected for Indians. But I'm saying the situation with Amerindians and the Africans are extremely urgent. And there could not be a just society if the the children of Kofi and Accra, who have liberated this country from the swamps, in a reasonable time, does not achieve economic parity or something close to economic parity in this country, I will say there should be no Guyana. I'm clear. Any Guyana that is hostile to me to that extent, that is offering a political and economic and social arrangements that will wipe out the African people as a people, okay, then there's no need for Guyana. There should be no Guyana. I am clear on it.
Tacuma Ogunseye, spilling it out here tonight. The PPP's political and economic ruling classes can make peace with the former colonialists, white people. They can make peace with the Venezuelans, but they cannot make peace with Africans. Very strong, that any political arrangement that is hostile to Black people, then we are talking about a no Guyana. Real powerful talk. Brother Ogunseye, Miranda once, she asked an update on your trial.
Okay, the trial is coming to a close. I think I have to go back in court on the 6th, I think, of June and the 10th. And by those 2 days, I think the prosecution will have already will complete its prosecution, its case. And from what I'm seeing and hearing, I don't think we have much to defend. Because I mean, I've been listening to political cases over the years, and this is the weakest political case, and the court is faced with. But this is Guyana, and you don't know how things play out in court until it ends. So I would say in early June, the case will be tied up, and the magistrate will probably fix some date at her convenience for ruling a decision.
Report there on the charges brought against Brother Tacuma last year, and it's still in court. Thank you, Miranda, for reminding us that that case is still out there. I'm getting some I'm getting some blows here. Stop asking people to be nice to Amna. One person says that if Jagdeo dies tonight, he certainly will not be sorrowful. Ogun, and a couple of weeks ago, I referred to Jagdeo as Mr. Jagdeo, and a lot of people I know who are very partial to me and partial to us really were angry at me referring to him as Mr. And I think the anger was not so much at me, but it was a reflection of how deeply those people have sunk our community, that they really don't want even a little nicety to be said about them. And I think it corresponds with the argument that you've been making here tonight. Your thoughts?
You see, that one of the last things any civilized political people want is hate, enter into the political equation, because what is happening in Palestine, okay, and the level of Israeli genocide is driven by the hate of the Israelis to the Palestinians. They don't see the Palestinians as people. They call them, animals and all kinds of things. And they engage in that genocide, okay, from a politics of hate. Now, we are a people who have all been victims of that politics in colonialism, slavery, indenture. And as a people who have experienced that kind of a system, the onus is upon us, okay, to try our best to make sure that our humanity don't sink to that low level. And what Jagdeo and the PPP have done to the African psyche, they have forced a lot of our people into a politics of hate. And I'm telling you, Jagdeo is the most hated politician among African, from African point of view. I'm telling you, there is the most hated politician. I don't know why he believes that is by accident. That is no accident. He earns it by his behavior. He earns it by his behavior. And it poses a lot of difficulties upon us, because people are saying that if Jagdeo become vicious, then you must respond in kind. I mean, that is a natural human instinct.
Mm-hmm.
But we are in politics, and we have to realize that Jagdeo is more than himself. Jagdeo is the dominant Indian leader. Even if we don't see as the president, even though we may raise questions about whether the president is legitimate and the party in power legitimate, you can't question the legitimacy of his control and his representation of Indians. So he's an Indian leader. And you can't separate how you deal with Jagdeo from to some extent how the Indian community will view it. And while we may hate Jagdeo to the bone, we still have an obligation as political and revolutionary people, okay, to take cognizance of a wider issue, which is the Indian psychic and the Indian community, and don't allow African politics to easily be interpreted as hate politics against Indians, because there are Indian rights activists and PP people who are telling African Indians that we hate them. So those are some of the complexities we have to deal with people like Jagdeo. That while we know they really deserve civil behavior because of their own politics and attitude, we have to rise above that. Because at the end of the day, we have a nation to build and a people to lead. And we are very clear that the leadership that we want to offer African people must be a civilized leadership that could stand up, okay, in the world, and to say a people who come out of a multiracial situation and as people who come out of slavery and colonialism could act and be, okay, a standard for revolutionary and progressive politics at the level of the human spirit and human behavior. And that is part of our dilemma, that we have those responsibilities that Jagdeo don't have.
We have those responsibilities that Jagdeo doesn't have. The Bostonians are writing me here tonight to say they're missing class tonight because they're laying to rest one of our revered sons, Rudolph Thomas, well known in the village as Walkabout, who is being buried today. And you all know the funeral these days go up until past midnight, because after they put down the body, the funeral continues. And so Patricia and all the Bostonians have sent me notes saying they hate to miss tonight, but the village is burying one of its popular sons, Walkabout, today. So the Bostonians are not present tonight in large numbers. And talking about Bostonians and funeral, Dennis Booker, Danette and the Booker family, they're burying their mother, a matriarch of our village in the coming days. On Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, the viewing will be at the Gurano Funeral Home on 9222 Flatlands Avenue, Brooklyn, New York, from 4 to 7 p.m. So that is the Guriano Funeral Home. I hope I got that right. On Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, 9222 Flatlands Avenue, Brooklyn, New York, from 4 to 7. It'll be followed by a service from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. So that's this Wednesday. The repast will be at 9302, make sure I get my year right, Ditmas Avenue, I think at Legacy Loft. So this Wednesday, the bookers will be holding the going home ceremony for their mother. And you all know the bookers from this program and all the program. Those of you in the New York area, you all are excused from class on Wednesday, because on Wednesday from 4 to 7, there's the viewing, and then the service from 7 to 9 p.m., followed by the repast. It is at the Guriano Funeral Home on 9222 Flatlands Avenue, Brooklyn. And for those of you in Buxton, the final burial will be in Buxton the following Monday, and that is Monday the 20th. They'll be taking our home to be buried in our village on the 20th. That's Monday the 20th. So those of you in the Brooklyn area, please go out and mourn with the bookers this Wednesday. And those of you who are at home in Buxton on Monday the 20th, she will finally be laid to rest. Stalwart of our village, one of the original entrepreneurs, as I said, one of that generation of women who decided that they were not just going to be homemakers and babysitters, that they were going to go out there and they were going to do business in addition to being homemakers. Their husbands were riding the farm or gone to the bush and so on, and they stepped in. Really a generation of female entrepreneurs that set the stage for whatever still lingers in our village, where our women continue to do and engage in small businesses. Miss Lillian Booker, dead at 101, was really a trailblazer. Our condolences to our family. And of course, like I said, Rudolph Thomas from my village, my friend, walkabout, being buried today in Buxton. Condolences to his family. Dr. Barbara Thomas, who is a professor at the University of Guyana, well known there. That's his sister. And walkabout, really, as you can tell from the name, one of those village people. And I remember, you all know there was always people who fight for you when you was a little boy, and walkabout was one of those boys. When I get into trouble, I can't defend myself, walkabout would fight for me, and so on. And one of those guys who didn't like to see advantage take on nobody. He was a fight man. You don't care who it was. They had some fight man in Buxton, and walkabout never frightened to fight any fight man. I remember one of his neighbors was a guy named Ovid Watson. Ovid never smiled. Ovid would fight. You don't have to watch Ovid, so, and nobody wanted to fight Ovid, and walkabout fight Ovid. He was one of those fighters in his own way, for fairness and justice, and we mourn his loss. May his soul rest in peace, and may he find his peace with his ancestors. He certainly has more work to do in the land of the ancestors. Brother Tacuma, your closing thoughts.
Okay, I want to join with you to extend the WPA condolences to the family of both of those two outstanding Bostonians. Okay, you know, that community have always been, that village have always been very close to the party. And whenever we lose Bostonians, it's not just an ordinary loss. You know, for us, it do have some special significance. Now, in closing, I want to say to African people and to the whole entire nation that we have to recognize the historical moments that we are faced in. And we have to decide whether we're going to play games that is destructive to the future of the country. Guyana become a petro state. Guyana become more important in this global strategic competition, and all kinds of forces have their eyes on Guyana and have their intentions with Guyana. It is clear to the most political dunce that a country with the kind of resources that we have, oil plus other resources, and with a population of about 750,000 people, once economic development begin to take off in the country, you don't have enough Guyanese to, you know, man that development, and you have to bring in people. It is almost a gone conclusion. And in a couple of years, in 2 decades or less, you could have more expatriates, okay, and foreign migrants inside the country, more than African Indians and Amerindians. It doesn't take much, okay, for those who have designed in the country to replace the population as they invest more and more of their money, okay, to make the original population a minority in their own country. And that is the destiny that is facing us. And I'm saying to our men, countrymen and women, we can't stand up against those forces as a divided country. We're too small in numbers, and if we are divided, it becomes easier for them to swallow us up. We need to stand as a united country that could put in place laws that prevent foreigners from taking over our country. But if we have a set of rulers who are banking their political existence on exploiting, okay, the new numbers that are arriving in the country to give them some political advantage for their narrow interests to hold on to political power in the old way, there is an extensional threat to all Guyanese. And I'm saying that we're not in the old engagement of the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And whether what we do now will quickly determine, okay, what will become of Guyana and its people very quickly. And I think we have a small window of opportunity to stave off what I see is in front of us. And I think that we have to make a historical compromise, regardless of all what, who do what, who in do what, who want to get through power in the back door, the front door. And the hypocrisy of the PPP, that if the Venezuelans were to cross the border tomorrow, they will want Africans to defend. They're going to ask whether you want to come through the back door or the front door to go to the front. They will take it as a natural logic that the Guyanese, they must defend the country. But when you ask as Africans, as the Guyanese, let me share in the power and the economy of the country, they got problems with them. And I'm saying the PPP and the Jagdeo leadership has been the worst leadership of the Indian community. And this leadership is coming after benefiting from all the less shortcomings of previous leadership. So they have no excuse. They're the worst thing that ever happened to the Indian community and the worst thing to happen to Guyana. But we got to be realistic to the extent that Indians invest in them. We got to take that as a political reality. And we have to put our stakes on equality. We want half the power, we want all the power. In a simple nutshell, this is the message to Black African community and the message to the country. We want a society that is non-domineering and a society where we have half the power, both economically and politically, and okay, over time. It can't happen overnight, but over time. There's our goal. Because it's only that way we believe we could guarantee the continued existence of Africans living in dignity and Africans being rewarded for the 200 plus years of slavery and deprivation of generational wealth.
Brother Tacuma Ogunseye here tonight. Thank you very much, my brother, for coming through and really lighting up Politics 101 tonight on a Monday night, leaving a lot of tongues, as they say, wagging here on the program and really throwing out a lot of wisdom here tonight, but also some political realities jolting us, as it were. Thank you very much, my brother.
Thank you.
And to your audience, I'm eternally grateful, as always. As always, you all are out in large numbers tonight. What more can I ask for? What more can we ask for? I want to thank you all so much. Thank you all so much, so much. We're going to win this thing. We are going to win this thing. We have what it takes. We have what it takes. And we're not giving up. We're not giving up. You all stay put with us. See you all tomorrow night. I think Dr. Henry Jeffrey is going to be on tomorrow night. And as you all know, we got a lot to talk about. Stay good.